Good morning, everyone. We are learning Mishna Bikurim. We are in Perek Beis, Chapter 2, Mishna 4, Mishna Daled, Mishna 4. And I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalom Rabinowitz, Shalom Espas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. V'yesh b'bikurim ha'she'ein b'tshuma u'v'maiser. The Bikurim has certain laws that do not apply by Tshuma or by Maiser Sheni. Bikurim niknim mechuber lekarka. Bikurim can be acquired, which means Bikurim can be sanctified even while they are connected to the ground. Actually, the ideal way of separating Bikurim is, which is brought, we will learn later, is when a farmer sees fruit beginning to ripen on a tree, designates them as Bikurim. So that's where you see clearly that Bikurim can be designated even while attached to the ground. A person can make his entire field Bikurim, as an entire, can say the whole vineyard is Bikurim. As we learned previously, if a person separates Bikurim and they get ruined, you have to replace them. Utu'unim carbon. And when the person brings Bikurim, he has to bring a carbon shlamim, peace offering with it. This year, Bikurim are accompanied by song. As we're going to learn later on, when the Bikurim entered the Beis HaMikdash, the Levites would sing. The Levites would sing. Utenufa needs waving. That means that the Bikurim are brought in a basket, and both the Kohen and the owner of the Bikurim, they hold the Bikurim together, and they wave it in all directions, like a lulav. They wave it four directions: north, south, east, and west. If you follow the and again, the exact order of which one was first or second probably depends on the custom of how you wave your lulav on Sukkot, and which directions and in the directions of how you do it. And also up and down, meaning heaven and earth. So that's tenufa, that's waving. Velina. And you have to stay overnight. The person who brings Bikurim, even if he's not bringing it on Yontif, he has to stay overnight. He cannot leave Yerushalayim that day. He has to stay overnight, and he can leave Yerushalayim the next day, the next morning, the next day. The truth is that's not only a law by Bikurim, it's a law by anybody who brings a carbon. If a person goes to Yerushalayim one day and brings a carbon, he has to stay in Yerushalayim that day. He cannot leave until the next day. So all of these apply to Bikurim. They do not apply to Shemar and to Meiser. Number one, Shim and Meiser, you cannot designate while they are connected to the ground. You cannot make your entire field Shuma, and you certainly can't make Meiser whole field Meiser Sheni, because Meiser Sheni is a tenth of something. It's a tenth of the produce, and it can't be more than that. So you can't make your entire field Truma, your entire field Meiser Sheni. If you separate Truma and Meiser Sheni, they get ruined. You don't have to replace them. And the last four parts about bringing a sacrifice and song and waving and saying overnight, those only apply to something that only applies to people that are in Yerushalayim at the Beis HaMikdash and offering things at the Beis HaMikdash, like the Bikurim and the carbon that goes along with it, which is just not relevant, not applicable to Truma and to Meiser Sheni, because they have nothing to do with the Beis HaMikdash. We continue with the laws of Rechilas, Klal Tes, Chapter 9 from the Chavetz Chaim, and we are in Sip Zion, paragraph 7. Now, until now, the Chavetz Chaim was talking about when you know that Reuven wants to go into partnership with Shimon, and you know or size up that Reuven is going to get hurt by coming into partnership with Shimon, that he can warn Reuven. And we have discussed, and the Chavetz Chaim discussed at length all the different conditions that are necessary. Now the Chavetz Chaim again continues. The same thing applies if, let's say, you're not telling a partner about his, or a person about his prospective partner. We're talking about where you know that someone stole something from someone else or damaged something of his, or that he caused him some kind of other problem. You cannot say anything to the victim unless all the conditions met before are met. You have to know for sure that it's an actual damage. You have to, you cannot exaggerate. You can't say it more than it is. You have to intend for a constructive purpose. You have to make sure that the person who even the perpetrator of the crime doesn't get hurt in some way more than he's supposed to. And also, as mentioned before, the person who stole, you went and rebuked him, trying to get him to fix up what he did, and he didn't listen. Otherwise, it's forbidden. When it comes to these matters, do not be quick to give yourself permission to just go forward. Gotta stop, contemplate, have all the 5 conditions be met. Because you're going to be too quick to pass judgment on your own. It's very possible that you're going to land up transgressing the prohibition of rechilas. The Chavetz Chaim continues, everything we've written until now makes no difference whether the friend asks you about the other person, or whether you are voluntarily telling him the information. Because of all the conditions we mentioned until now are met. Even if he doesn't ask, you should tell him. You should be trying to save him from any kind of damage. But if the conditions aren't met, then even if he's pressuring you to answer him, you can't do it. One last paragraph. Chavetz Chaim wrote previously that rechilas can be that the typical rechilas is you tell Reuven what Shimon said or did to him. It's also rechilas, said the Chavetz Chaim, if you don't tell Reuven, but you tell others, Shimon said this about Reuven or did this to Reuven. The problem is by doing that is that very often it comes out that those people, eventually from those people, it gets back to Reuven himself. And therefore, what you said is rechilas because you, at the end, what you said caused that Reuven should be upset with Shimon. If for some reason you're telling other people because you need to enlist their help in helping Reuven, that's a different story. Then you would be able to tell them only, again, if all the conditions that we said until now are met. But otherwise, you're not allowed to say it to other people, even though, again, you're not telling it to the person who did it, who's suffering, who may potentially or has suffered from what the other person did or said. So you're not saying rechilas in that sense, but it is rechilas because of the fact that if it gets back to him because he told these other people about what Shimon said about him, then at the end of the day, you spoke rechilas because it's your story that you told that caused Reuven to be upset with Shimon. Have a wonderful day.